everybody. How about this 5D convention? Pretty cool, huh? One of my favorite things about coming to these conferences as a speaker is to listen to the other presenters and meet all of you. And I'll tell you, I learn so much and I grow as a person coming to these. I'm really very, very grateful to be here with such luminaries and all of you. And thank you guys so much for coming under very weird conditions in the world today. And maybe we'll talk about how this weirdness relates in multidimensional terms, because I think there are some parallels. My name is Brad Olson, author of the Esoteric series of books and some others, and sometimes a jack of all trades. And I like to come into these panels as the moderator, as sort of the guy who just is curious. And if I were to ask really good questions on a subject, what would they be? These luminaries have experience, and that's why I feel like this is my period to learn as well. So I'd like to introduce Lori Spagna, Maureen St. Germain, and Lowell Johnson. And I will give them the mics, and they can tell you a little bit about themselves. And we're still waiting for Alex Collier, so hopefully he will still join us. But Lori, tell us a little bit about you and the 5D.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here, and I'm happy to be with you. Again, my name is Lori Ann Spagna. I've been working with the Ascension journey for over 20 years. I'll just say really quickly that I started over 20 years ago from after my brother had a near-death or a death experience. He died of a drug overdose, and I started getting messages to him, and it turned out to be my wake-up call. But up until that time, I spent the first 20 years out of college in the hamster wheel slave game. And during that time, I got to a point where I was smoking 22 packs of cigarettes a day and drinking like 8 beers a day, and my hair was falling out, my thyroid was off, I was 60 pounds overweight, I had 6 figures in credit card debt, bad debt. And after I started getting these messages from my brother and started listening and paying attention, I made a radical shift in my life, quit that corporate enslavement job, and at that point I ended up becoming a dog trainer. I started hearing the dogs, and they started saying, "We're going to teach you. Listen to us, we'll teach you." And then within a year of that, I moved to Maui. I was there for 2 years. I had several what we call near-death, my teacher would call them little death experiences, which is because they weren't in a hospital. They were in a meditation state, but not an astral travel state. And I also had a first contact experience while living in Maui, which activated all of my enough dormant potential that I could then begin to anchor it into this physical world and share it with others. So that's where I'm coming from about the Ascension experience. And since then, I've been developing my gifts and talents in the healing arts and activating dormant DNA, which really is the gift for all of us. That is the most precious resource on Earth, which, by the way, if you didn't hear me this morning, it's the reason people want to get Q-tips up the nose, right, to get the DNA. It's a collection process. It's the reason the CIA is purchasing, 123andMe and all these DNA collection organizations, right? So, but in any case, not to get sidetracked on that, that's kind of my background, and I guess we'll start from there, right, as we each introduce ourselves.
So I'm Maureen St. Germain, and I've written a number of books that are well known. You may be familiar with the book Waking Up in 5D. I've taught all over the world in 24 countries. My books are translated into 12 languages. My Ascension journey began when I was born. I remember my birth. I remember as a child being watched. I remember some of them were benevolent and some of them weren't. And I wasn't concerned. I just knew that, there were the two sides. And growing up, I grew up in a very idyllic environment. And like Lori, I, jumped on the corporate track for a number of years and had a family. I began to research deeper and deeper, and that activated many of my gifts and my skills. I was already intuitive, and I came by that through my family. And so it was an easy transition to move into this work. I will tell you, when you ask, the answers will come. When you ask for something, it will happen. When I decided I was ready to let go of my corporate work, and I was very dependent upon it financially, with 4 sons and 3 of them in college. 3 weeks later, I was out of a job with a big check, and I never looked back. So I've been teaching first the Merkaba and then Ascension work since then, and I'm so happy to be here with you and see your smiling faces.
My name's Lowell Johnson, and I'm not the luminary that these people are. My wake-up call started maybe 5 years ago. I spent a career as a hospitality executive running hotels and non-gaming and casinos. There was a period in there where I had an IT business for 10 years, and then I had a TIA, a mini stroke, and that was kind of the period of time with which I was provided to research meditation and that type of therapy. The journey started shortly after that. I was at a period where, with my last marriage, we don't need to number them, right? Thank you. And it seemed nobody was a bad person. We had just different directions. And it was funny because it was her that triggered my awakening. So it was fun to have these conversations at home, but they really weren't being reflected back in the way that was meaningful to me. Time went on and things called out to me. I was still working when it happened, but half of my being at work is entrenched in this mindset about things that I see that I'm supposed to be doing. The property that I was at was in the process of being transitioned from a former Tropicana property to Caesars, so it would have been thrilling to stay there and continue to make 6 figures and enjoy all the life around that. The hotel project was not going to move forward. During the period at which the acquisition was taking place with Caesars, everything else was on hold. That was about the time that I was getting unsettled anyway, so there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. Handed in my resignation at the end of the year. By the first part of February of 2018, I was going to be in Las Vegas. Found a house to buy, I had locked in, and I was going to consult from there. Yeah, that shit didn't happen. No, something else grabbed a hold of me, and I started going down a different path. COVID had hit then. Never mind all the complications with that. I don't live in Santa Rosa. My son lives in Santa Rosa. Yes, I park there right now until I figure out what's next for me. But as you can see, the universe had different ideas for me. And the first one was that when COVID broke and I wanted to go find some peace in nature, I was headed to the national parks in the Southwest. They were closed. They weren't available. So the next thought in my head was Shasta. Driven by it many times, never spent any time here. But I understood that there was some kind of spiritual energy here to explore, so the thought was to come for a week. I'll make this short. I was here for 5. And during that time, I had my opportunity to go to Telos. Didn't know anything about Telos before. Had kind of an idea about Lemurians because I was chasing what I thought I knew about my background in Atlantis, and that's how that overlap had happened. From there, things have changed, have they not? Indeed. Yes, my my partners here are kind of in the loop on a few things that have happened within the last month. So when I reflect on the last 2 years and how fast it's changed for me, because I was a hospitality executive, that's who I thought I was. Everything is accelerated at an absolutely crazy rate, and the things that we've been talking about today happened within the last month. I will share more of that because this wasn't show and tell, it was Q&A today, but I'll be here for a few more days after a while, and those of you that are more curious about this, we'll share what we can. Okay, so with that, I've spoken enough. We'll let Brad go back to work.
Well, we got another hour to go. And it might just be you and I, because Maureen and Lori may be double booked and have to go to a goddess panel in 20 minutes. So don't be alarmed if they get up and go. So let's focus on you guys. And I love how you've all told your story in life and come to the realization that executive and six figures and all the trappings and waking up in 3D. And sometimes I do that. I'll wake up in 3D and be like, oh, I'm still here? Those trees were so awesome. I want to go back to of our imaginations and where we go in our dream time. And to me, that's always felt like that is the intersection with the multidimensionalities. So maybe we can talk about dreams a little bit too and how that works into it. But it's so funny because I also had this crossroads in life. I'll keep it super brief. When I got out of college, I studied to be in advertising in Chicago, and I was going to be an ad executive. And right now, I'd have a house in the suburb with 2.5 children, and who'd probably be through college by now. I don't know what the 0.5 would be doing, but maybe something cool. And I know in my heart I would always be wondering about this timeline and what I did up till now. But instead, out of college, I took a backpack and just started wandering. And it was the best move I ever made. So when you follow your heart, yeah. And everybody thought I was Peter Pan and never wanted to grow up. And here I go into my 30s and my 40s, and I'm still traveling around the world, and even now. But that's been my learning process and my journey. And if you guys saw my talks, that's what I feel like the earth mysteries are so equally important. So let's go back to you ladies and fill the time as you need. Lowell, you and I may have to finish this out. But let's go into the multidimensionality. And so how do we come out of this waking dream of the 3D world with all the trappings, and how do we find ourselves in these higher frequencies of the upper dimensions?
Okay, well, I'll start with that. Let me just say from the perspective that I'm coming from, and this is coming from most of the channeling from the guides and ascended masters, and because I do a lot of channeling and what we call downloads and activations, is that what I would say is that we're in the first wave of the third wave of ascension. So if you think about the pre-wave, that was like Woodstock hippie era, pre-wavers, and we would call the people there who were the leaders the preceders. And then we had a first wave that came in. Those are all typically starseeds, people who identify as starseeds. I'm one of which. I identify as a braided starseed. And that first wave typically came online and was pretty activated in our knowing, like anchoring in these new frequencies by 2011, 2012. And we had this perspective that everything was going to shift 2012. That was kind of part of our mission. But the collective lagged. And so there was extensions in terms of linear time. So we brought in a whole new group of beings that were awakening called second wavers. Their role and job was to activate between the 2012, and into the most recent year of 2020. And they were to bridge the gap between this crazy woo-woo, unbelievable, non-physical realm and the physical. Because we, in the first wavers, were working mostly entirely with the non-physical. The 2020 is the catapult to awaken humanity. That's a third wave. And the biggest piece of what's brought up to the surface is the darkest of the dark. This is how I perceive it, and everyone gets to have their perception and their reality. But that's what I'm understanding. And so with that foundation, if we look at the external reality, and I won't talk too much longer, but if we look at the external reality, we can begin to start to realize our role as creators of this collection of experiences that we're choosing, either consciously or unconsciously. And as we become more and more conscious, we get to choose more and more the type of experiences we're going to engage in. And that's the ground play where we're at right now, becoming aware that it's all a choice based on what we believe and perceive, either conscious or unconscious, known to us or unknown, and where we vibrate in harmony. So if we're vibrating in harmony with extreme fear, we're going to be having something like what looks like a COVID type of experience, or not to say that that's all what it is, but it is vibrational matching. And if we're vibrating in harmony with the process of awakening, ascension, love, light, joy, etc., optimism, excitement, enthusiasm, that's going to bring us onto a different sort of timeline of experiences. And both are running in parallel at the same time. So this is where the third wave of awakening is starting. That's what I wanted to open with, okay?
I like to be the practical mystic and give you some tools. So we all know that we're aiming towards being heart-centered. If you're heart-centered, you're in 5D. What was not understood 10 years ago is that becoming fifth dimensional was not a leap in who you are, and you would close the door to 3D. It is a sine wave. And you are becoming 5D, then you drop down into your 3D self. And you're becoming 5D and a 3D self. When one of my sons, who was particularly hard to raise, did something wonderful, and I was calling my mom to celebrate his maturity, she said, well, honey, kids don't grow up in a straight line. And I was so young and so naive, I said to her, what does that mean? And she said, well, when they do something very mature, they usually follow it with something stupid. And that's us. That's us. Because when we do something really mature and we're stepping into our power, then all of a sudden the ego kicks in and we get scared or worried, and we flip out or we get triggered. So here's 2 tools that I will give you. The first one is to announce when you go to bed at night, I'm waking up in 5D. Okay? The second one is I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I'm in contact with. Heaven on earth is the same thing as 5D. In the early years, when people asked me, well, what was it like to be 5D? My answer was, well, think of what the traditional churches teach us is heaven. That's 5D. But we're, as Lori has stated, we're at the beginning stages of that, and there's many layers of 5D that we're becoming. So the second tool, or third tool, I don't remember now where we're at, is to pray for those who you used to compete with. And bless their work, because it will bless yours. Because we are now in an era where competition is no longer the governing force. It's collaboration.
Why do I have to follow her? I don't know how to pick up after that. We are. Thank God. All I can tell you from my perspective, and then I'd rather just pass this back to Brad and open it up for questions instead, because I'm sure you'd like to ask. It came to me for a while. As I got older, I had naps in the afternoon, 15 or 20 minutes, very refreshing, and I always went somewhere. I didn't realize that I was bilocating when that happened. It took a while for that to all integrate, and the deeper I went, the more I could remember. And one day it finally came around, and there was an activation that told me what I was experiencing. Now I have a better idea of how I can control that now. So when I can find that spot that meditation takes you, where you're at the doorway of the field of probabilities, plant your intention there. Get there, and that's your spot. My advice for you today, with the way that I think the world is accelerating into the next stage of consciousness, get yourself in alignment as fast as you can.
Nice. All right. Well, we are going to open it to questions, but I have one more round for you guys. Let's just imagine we were living with the laws of consistency that Alex Collier says, that the extraterrestrials always give to their next generation everything that the previous knew. There are no secrets anymore. We do live in the age of transparency, and everything you know, I know, and vice versa. Nobody's holding anything back anymore. So wouldn't it be great if, say, in kindergarten we started learning about our chakras, and by second grade we start activating them, and in third grade we're astral traveling, and by fifth grade we're all telepathic? Can you imagine how advanced we would all be in this room if that wasn't withheld? So this is where I think the future in education and schooling, and it's a lifetime of learning really, that we're all going to come into this, and this should be an end goal for our educational system. Really teach them about the body and the pineal gland and the power of the mind and how much we can do with this. Then when we start getting into interdimensionality, well, then we start getting really interested, because then we visit the angelic realms, which I do believe are in the 5D is one of pure love, pure light. And it just becomes even more so as you go higher in the dimensions. But notice we're doing a leapfrog here from 3D to 5D. And so since we're speaking of dimensionality, let's discuss the fourth dimension. And there could be some darkness and some things lurking down there. But like the kids in kindergarten who are doing Dimensionality 101, we have to talk about it all. And let's be totally transparent. So Lori, why don't you give us a quick, whatever you can on the 4D.
All right, well, the first thing I want to say is everything that you just initially started with about learning to be telepathic and activating our chakras, opening our tube torus, our core pillar, all of that stuff, it's all within us. And also the part that you discussed about our ancestors pass everything down for us. I just want to, right before 4D, address that part because it's so important. Our DNA is what stores up everything we need. So the first two strands of DNA that humans operate with in the third dimensional paradigm, and by the way, we all know that 4D, 5D, all of it, it's not external to us. It's all within us. There's nothing external to us except what we project from our consciousness onto our external reality, based on our knowing and our unknowing and our frequency bandwidth. It's really important to understand. But so 5D and everything beyond that and all the dimensions, they're all within us. They're within us to access and to become conscious of, to awaken, to remember. But that said, the first two strands of DNA that the typical human is operating on are corrupted. I call them corrupted because they've been messed with from longer than eternity, from, yes, we could call them negative alien races. We could also call them even our ancestors through their own, we'll use the word ignorance, not as an insulting word, but through the not knowing. So the corrupted first two strands are things like disease, misfortune, feeling like you're cursed, feeling like you have problems that you can't solve no matter what, having arguments and debates, constant reactivity, anxiety, worry, fear, etc. All of the, lack, limitation, feeling like you don't have enoughness, like all that stuff, all of our unconscious programming is literally corrupted information energetically encoded into our first two strands of DNA, which can be 100% healed. Really what we mean is resolved. Because what it is it's the storylines from the ancestors. They didn't understand that now through the process of accessing these frequencies of consciousness that we now have access to, we can download and awaken those gifts of consciousness and resolve the issues of the ancestors through the bloodlines and even into the future, so that we don't pass the corrupted stuff down. That's the first thing, which is an unbelievable gift. We can't even begin to imagine how amazing that is, because our future, assuming we wake up to this, is free from disease, free from this pain and suffering. Now, when you get into the next 10 strands of physical DNA that everybody's trying to figure out what's going on with that right now, and geneticists and everyone wants access to it, that's where all of our great gifts are of the awakening journey, including all of our gifts to practice and engage in telepathy with confidence. All of our gifts as healers, all of our gifts to communicate, to heal, and all of the solutions of Earth's problems. all of the solutions are in our next 10 strands of DNA, dormant, waiting to be activated at the point in time and space when we're conscious enough to access it and to use it basically for benevolence, right? Beyond the first 12 strands, which science doesn't even realize yet that we have those, is completely uncoded DNA, which means pure, unlimited potential that humanity will eventually have access to. And what is that? We don't even know what that is. We haven't even begun to play with it. And all that stuff lies beyond the 12th dimension, because the first 12 strands, in a sense, correlate to the dimensional realities. And it's not linear as if it's although it sounds linear. As we access this dormant potential, awaken it and resolve our 3D-related issues, and integrate our advanced selves, which is future versions of us, which, by the way, become our star family races in the future, the benevolent ones. As we activate and awaken this, we access our most amazing gifts, talents, and abilities. They're all there, dormant, waiting for us. With that said, I'll just briefly address 4D and then move on, pass the baton here. And that's to say that from my perspective, a lot of people call 4D time. I completely disagree with that, even if scientists say it. Fourth dimensional reality is when the human being starts to awaken to realize that they're not just a physical. Right? 3D, it's like the skeptics, the cynics, the researchers, the documentarians. Nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that's the land of 3D. 4D is for the believers, the awakeners, the explorers, ones who say there's something beyond just what I can see, touch, taste, and measure. There's something else, I don't know what it is. And it encompasses everything that is unknown to us, that is non-physical, that we haven't begun to explore. And in a sense, it is the gateway to the higher realms, because you have to first be able to realize there are angels. It's not woo-woo. You have to actually realize you do have chakras. These are energy centers. They are, once you start, dead people don't die. Like once you start realizing that, and you have the ability to navigate that terrain, and yes, thoughts are things, and emotions come and go from somewhere, and this thing called ego, it's actually just a bunch of inertia in the fourth dimensional realm that you have. It's not even true. You're a God in a God's body, representing God in human form. The ego structure is a fourth dimensional structure that humans have believed for eons of time, but it's not really true. It's an inertia that traps people and makes them limited and small and keeps them stuck. When you start breaking through that, that's when you start to get into this 5D frequency that is love, peace, and joy-based. But you still can work with the non-physical all the time. You work with your thoughts, you work with your emotions, you work with your energy fields, and you start accessing what serves you and leaving behind what doesn't. Because, yeah, there's a lot of dark stuff in there, too. All right, I'm going to pass this on.
Star. That was beautiful.
I like to keep things simple. So my explanation of 4D is that it's a portal, like Grand Central Station. Nobody goes there to spend the night. Fourth dimension is the realm of high emotion. It is also a realm that very easily accesses into 5D. So what happens is when you have a very intense emotional experience, you suddenly know stuff, or you see stuff, or you experience stuff that you had never experienced before. So I like to think of 4D like going to the airport. You go there because you want to go somewhere else. And what humans don't realize is that the benevolent ones, the ascended masters, have created a magnanimous dimension that is open to all, that allows you to slide easily between third to fifth. And they did this because humans were staying in 3D so much that they failed to take the opportunity. We have been brainwashed with advertising, with AI, with energy that's being broadcast on us. Similarly to what Lori said, I called that group those that would have us fail, or those who would have us fail, because they're not actually able to do that anymore. So the good news is the big overlords are gone, but their so-called minions or lackeys are still trying to maintain control. Because you now have easy access into the fifth dimension, when you're in an emotional state, if you have a process that you're going through, you easily arrive into bliss. And many of you, including myself, have found ourselves in bliss at the peak of a very emotional experience where we were so upset and so worried or so worked up, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves in bliss. Now, one of the things I did the first time this happened to me, I was in this dark place from a breakup, and I asked for 1 million ascended master surgeons to clear from me everything that stood in my way of letting go of my angst, drama, sorrow, whatever you want to call it. And I went to bed that night. I forgot about it. And I was sitting at my dining table by myself at lunchtime, and I literally felt like somebody had lifted a weight off my shoulders. Just like when you wear weights and walk and then you take them off and you feel pretty light. Well, that's what it felt like. And I stayed in bliss for a week. And each time I would come back down, and then I'd slide right back up to bliss and back down again. So when you ask for help, it will come. So in 4D, to help you understand the concept, I want to give you a couple of other tools, and that is you can access more advanced versions of you right now. So if you need a skill or you need understanding, you can ask for the version of you that already does this, already has mastery, and then that information is acquired by you. Because remember, there is no such thing as time. Everything is simultaneous. So I'm going to sing for you to help you. Some of you who have no experience with music might not appreciate it, but everybody else who has any kind of musical training will. In the traditional diatonic scale, we sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I'm a little off key here. Let me do it again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, do. Okay? Now think of those musical tones as numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1. Now, listen carefully. I'm going to do just like it was a dimension. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 1. When you hear a 4, it makes you want to slide up or down. I'll do it again. 1, 3, 4, 4, 4. You don't want to stay here. You want to go down. Or you want to go here and go up. And when you hit 5, you want to go to the octave. So this is you. This means that you use 4D as a way to get where you want to go, not as the destination. And that's why we skip. So when you're in high emotion, good or bad, you'll slide into 5. Just like that. All you have to do is intend. And as the others have already said, 4D does have polarity. So there is this quality of quicksand when you go dark, when you feel sad, sorry for yourself. And equally so, it's like a vortex going high when you're moving up in your joy.
Nice.
Really? I follow you again? I've yielded my time because Lori and Maureen have already described the way that resonates with me in talking about how 5D, 4D reacts to me. So we'll just move on to the next thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we will. We will get to questions. Let me just add, in 4D, I think this is the realm of ghosts. Wouldn't we say the lower, denser 4D frequencies, the archonic realm? And this has been a vex on humanity for a long, long time. So they have been energy parasites from this lower density fourth realm. And again, we're kids in kindergarten, Dimensions 101, learning about this stuff. And I just learned so much from these guys. So I feel we got gold stars all around, even you, Lowell. You've got it in there too. So yeah, let's open it to questions. We're doing rolling tape here, and to be on the video, please step up to the mic so we can get it recorded, and then we'll answer it, whoever is best to answer. Go ahead, step on up, please. And then anybody else, you can get in line. We'd love to hear from you. And so in this fourth dimensional realm, we don't want to stick around too long. Like when you see a ghost, it's shocking. You want to get away from it. But in the fifth dimensional realm of love, that is the leapfrog into 5D. That's how I went in. Yes, ma'am.
After I had a traumatic car crash, I went on a spiritual path. And about 3 years after the car crash, I went through what was called a dark night of the soul. This was I going through the fourth dimension and reaching the fifth, because it was very, very traumatic, and I was fighting a lot of dark forces. Some might have been reptilian. It was very intense. I was put inside wards. I was shot by police. Arms was torn out. My joints. It was just traumatic. And then one day, in my stillness, I fought for my life. And as I fought for my life, I stand my power. But when it ended. It was gone. And on that day, I was able to move on to my stronger spiritual realm. So was I in that fourth D?
Very likely. Like a snake shedding its skin. You didn't need what you let go of. And we all hang on because we want what is familiar. And when we finally decide to let go because hanging on is too painful.
Well, the only thing I had at that time was I didn't have anything really but my spirit. Because my mind was already in psychosis. So I didn't have my mind. My body wasn't important because every muscle and cell in my body was stressed because I had seizures. And I was in the psychosis. I had, So it wasn't about the mind or the body, it was about the spirit. I felt like someone was trying to take my life. So I was fighting for my life. It wasn't about letting go of material stuff or anything like that.
Understood. You want to add to that?
I'll add to it. Yeah, the dark night of the soul is one of the most painful experiences that a first waver ever goes through. And I'm really sorry that you had to go through that. And typically what happens is first waivers especially go through what's called the dark night of the soul. I call it now, from what I have learned from the guides and the channeling, it's like a null zone, which humanity is going through, right? The collective of humanity right now is going through a dark night of the soul. But the Lightworkers in the early waves would go through this on our own. And the null zone is where you are releasing all of the density of all of whatever crap you, whoever you are, as an individuated being, have taken on from lifetime to lifetime, but you're doing it on your own. And because you're a first waver. And so while you're doing it, you don't know up, down, left, right, or center. You're just trying to figure it out. And the thing is, for a while there, you keep replaying those old patterns. This is called a looping pattern. You're looping over and over again because the patterns are playing out until you can clear yourself from them and resolve them. And so while that's happening, you have no idea what's going on because this old pattern's playing out and you somehow have to find your way out of your own darkness and into the light. Yes, you are playing with and moving through a fourth dimensional realm in a sense, but it's more than that because what you're doing, in addition to doing your own clearing so that you can come into holding your light, is that you're resolving ancestral crap that you took on as a light worker to support humanity, to do the darkest kind of clearing that nobody else can understand or relate to. And that's why when you get involved, because I went through that in Maui too, for 2 years, it's excruciating. And a lot of times we do go off to somewhere that, like off to the mountaintop, so to speak, to do it, because if people find us, they think we're crazy while we're going. They can't understand. So anyway, it's a service, but you don't realize you're doing service while you're going through that. And you eventually are going to be preparing your body for more light. That's the process.
Yeah. I think you have something to add.
No. How about another question?
Okay, so there's a lot of us that are on this path that don't have the visions and the guides and the access to the higher dimensional realm that you all have. And so we're in the dark, so to speak, and we fear the unknown, and we hear about those that would keep us down, and being afraid of them and not understanding that even though they would try to harm us if they could, it's not really about us, it's about them. Is there a tool that we can use to help us get to the other side of that so that we can live our process from a higher dimensional perspective?
Opening the toolbox. That sounds like a Maureen question.
That's right.
Meditation is your number one tool. If you have monkey mind, use guided meditations. There's one very powerful CD that I created called Mantras for Ascension. And in it are two mantras, one that clears your pranic tube and one that clears the field that you are in, your home, your space, wherever you're at, your car. And those two together will give you access to other realms. I was a lot like you guys. I didn't get a lot of information in my early years of meditating and trying. And once I started doing guided meditations, and especially these two chants, I found myself hearing and experiencing so much more. I will never forget the time that I was standing in my garden, and it was all overgrown with quackgrass, they call it. And I said to the elementals, look at this place. Like you talk to your teenagers, right? Look at this place. It's a mess. I thought you guys were going to help me. And then without thinking, I said in my thought, I really wish I could hear you guys. I had been doing those two chants for a year, every single day. And suddenly I was aware of a gnome, and he spoke up. And he literally shook his finger at me and said, "You never asked us." And I went, "What? How can that be?" I remember planting all those tulips. We put dolomite in. We put in 150 tulips. With each planting, I asked you to help. And he said, "Oh, no. You expected us to help you." And I went, "Whoa." And then I said, "Well, if I asked you, would you help me?" And he said, "If we help you, will you still come out here all the time?" And that's when I bought outdoor patio furniture and took all my meals outside. So understand that your connection with nature is pivotal, absolutely pivotal.
You may not feel the things we feel yet. It's inside. Believe me, if you got here for this conference, you were triggered in some way, and you're looking for a touchstone, just like the rest of us. When these things happen, you're looking for somebody that can give you some frame of reference. You can't talk about a lot of this stuff because my family would think I've just lost it. Believe me, you'll overcome that. Your circle and your tribe is going to get a little bit smaller, but you're going to find the people that you can talk about these things with without risk of ridicule. You don't risk any of that. They know what we're going through. And everybody is different, so we have different journeys and different timing. But the fact that you're all here speaks to me that something's triggered you to go find some more information, so welcome to the club.
So when you posed your question, one of the things you said is some of us can't all access or see these light beings, something to that effect. And then you said, if I heard correctly, some of us still have fear about what's going on. And what I would invite you to realize is that it's the fear that is the energetic frequency between your consciousness not accessing and seeing and being aware of, and accessing and seeing and being aware of. So the energetic density of the fear is up for you to be able to resolve. And fear is a very blanket kind of energy, right? It can apply to anything. So let me give you all this tool to process your fear. It's one of the most effective tools you will ever come into contact with. It is simply where you invite the fear in. Your body will get taken over for a little while. You'll feel like, not for a little while, moments. You'll feel the anxiety, welcome it in. Say, fear, I welcome you. I am the love that you've been looking for. Identify as the higher truth of who you are at the next octave of energy. You are the love that fear is looking for. And the moment you just let it come in, it's going to shake you, rattle you, roll you, and just keep breathing. Breathing and saying, I am the love. You're welcome here. Tears might come, stress, body shivers, whatever it is, fear. You're welcome here. I am the love that you have been looking for. And you keep breathing, and you will notice in just a few more moments that fear will be gone. And when you develop and practice this tool, it doesn't take a lot. You will have a tool for life to process any kind of fear that ever comes your way, no matter what the topic.
I like to say fear is a messenger. Change your belief or change your behavior. If you're trying to lose weight and you found that wonderful bonbon, you're going to get fear, but it won't show up necessarily when you're having that cookie. It'll show up later and project onto something else. And when you talk to the fear, and I do the same, I do talk to the fear also, I like to say, I feel the fear, what is your message? And you will be amazed because the fear will tell you where you are needing to change your belief or change your behavior. And then you can love it.
Yeah. I think we got another question.
Thank you. As we are transitioning and raising our consciousness in the world from 3D on upward, I've kind of felt worthy as the emotional all access to everything, and in a way, the internet is like a 4D version of instant information access. And yet we're faced with negative AI sort of permeating the internet and the technology. And so I'm curious if you have insight on how we can be like guide lighthouses somehow utilizing the internet, because it doesn't seem like we can really just drop it and just, practically communicate the world. So in this transition period, I am asking for support and insight in that way.
So just to clarify, because we're moving into the internet age and with AI emerging, how do we continue our journey of ascension, and how do we grok with that? I think that's a valid question.
Positive AI.
Yeah.
I had to, here, you go, and it'll come back. I'm going to be a senior citizen.
Cancel clear. You're having a fifth dimensional moment.
There it is. Come back, Lowell. Come back. We remembered. All right. How do I begin? here is the point at which you need to be the most discerning you've ever been. If you're going to rely on the internet to provide information for you, I think you already know what kind of discernment you need. But as you awaken, your access to stored information you had before starts to awaken. Your senses, your sensations all start to broaden, and you'll have an internal sense of what is right and what isn't. I wouldn't put too much stock and worry about AI. That's just me, and it's not my advice. That's just where I stand. Center yourself on what information you know you have inside of yourself and connect to source. Tune the rest of it out. Focus on that and get yourself right. Then your contribution to the rest of the collective is complete. But until you get this sorted out, and I don't have any magic key for that because our journeys are all different. You are a unique, loving individual with gifts none of the rest of us have. That's your role you're supposed to play. You weren't supposed to be cookie-cuttered, and none of us were. Whatever role you're supposed to play, when that day comes, it's going to be effortless for you, and we're all counting on you to step up to the plate because we look at you and that ability in miraculous ways because we can't do it. Does that help?
I'll always add something, as long as you're willing to have me. So what I would suggest to you is understand that AI is a sub-form of another species, right? And also, I've had some disagreement from the guides on this, but there are many who do agree that there are beings, like dark beings, who, I'm just asking for the right words, who were unable to traverse into, they were not light enough to anchor into a new body. So they're learning from the human species through artificial intelligence. It's like the astral unemployment line. It's the only way they can get in, right? They're not allowed to have another body. That's the first. So the second thing, as a human, just going through that experience, and this is very simple here, this piece, and then I'll give you a third piece that's the most powerful, is this is where the crystalline realm really comes into contact, really comes into help, like shungite. Shungite should be attached to every piece of technology, and you do have to clean it frequently because it absorbs all forms of radiation, shungite crystal. The third thing, which is the most powerful one of all, is to continually affirm, if you're not already aware, of your own sovereign right to be sovereign and liberated, that you are a single soul occupant, the only one who has the right and dominion over your body, your mind, your thoughts, and your emotions, and no one else is welcome in your field without your express, fully conscious consent. And you may have to affirm that for many, many times before finally it just is. And you won't need to anymore. But even in the in-between absence, like of your knowing how powerful that is, the law of the universe, free will, intent, consent, and authority, acknowledges your free will even where entities, AI, and quantum computers might not. The law of the universe will step in and say, no, this being has claimed sovereignty. And therefore you, AI, or any other entity, demonic, or anything else is no longer allowed to harass her. You just have to say it over and over again so that you affirm it for yourself. Sovereignty in your mind, body, energy field, emotions, physical form, and energetic space, and that you're a single soul occupant. And remind yourself, under the law of intent, consent, and authority, I command, this is so.
Thank you.
We're collaborating in Austin, Texas to create sovereign technology like the new 3D spatial internet and the entertainment game. So if anyone is into it and would like to talk or support, I will love to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you for your interest.
And this is the artist of these beautiful pieces lining the room. What an incredible light being that.
I think that's your name.
What's your name? Randy. Yeah. Thank you, Randy. That was great.
Peace, my name is Roulette. And before I start with my question, I want to get into the last segment with the sister when she asked a question about the internet. I want to just clear up some things. When we are on these phones looking up the internet, it is not really the internet, it is the outer net. The internet is all just inside. We get information. A lot of us on the bar getting bombarded without permission. So, just to clarify that. My question is, dealing with the dimensional consciousness, right? So we are traversing as a collective into the 5D. My question is, what kind of light are we dealing with? And what is the highest form of light that we can attain? Even when you traverse to the 5, to 6, to 7, to 8, these are light spectrums. What kind of light are we dealing with? And what is the highest form of light that we can attain?
Ooh, great question. Well, I'll just add, and I would love for you guys to chime in, there have been proven to be 13 dimensions. That is, in physics, known that we live within this intricate web of multidimensionality. It's all here, right now, 13. Science says so. They've detected it. How much higher can we go? Well, where do we go after 5D? We call it the angelic realm. We call it the light beings that exist there, one of full embodiment of love. Do you just become less dense and more into fully light body when you go higher and keep going?
I will give you another metaphor. We've all heard of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. When her daughter was killed by a drunk driver, the founder went into an emotional state that would be like 4D. Then she decided that she wanted to make a difference and not to be the only one suffering and to prevent the kind of suffering she felt. That's 5D, compassion. Then she gathered a group of people together and created Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That organization grew. They built partners. They built networks all over the world. That's like 7th dimension. 8th dimension is when they collaborated with other energies unlike theirs. So they partnered with AAA, the government, and other kinds of organizations. So what you want to understand is the capacity for evolution, I believe, is unlimited, and I bet you would too. So there is no limit. The only limit is our capacity to comprehend it.
Yeah, I would say that it is unlimited. However, one thing I would say is during the 2 years I was in Maui and I was working with really advanced frequencies, I used to have what I call floppy fish syndrome because I couldn't hold the light. I couldn't hold it in my body, and my body was moving out a lot of the density. I also agree it is unlimited. However, as long as we have a physical form, our physical structure is adapting to hold and embody more light while simultaneously clearing out the density that we've carried for lifetimes. And in the presence of a seemingly external world that's presenting a lot of fear-based paradigm to us. So what I would say is one way that you can all practice embodying more light that's very simple is if you enjoy the sun, not during a solar flare necessarily, but practice breathing in the light of the Son of God. Because Solaris, the Son of God, has all of the light frequencies, and that's part of the reason for all these solar flashes. It's, as many of you know, it's infusing our physical realm with more light. That's the purpose of the solar flares, to assist us and all of Earth to embody more light. And so if you're willing to practice with the Son of God, Solaris, you don't have to look directly at, don't do anything that would make you perceive that you could harm yourself, but just perceive yourself to breathe in the light of the Son of God, Solaris, and move it through your energy field, down your body, through your breath. And just by doing that, and even if you're willing to perceive it, receive it through your peripheral vision, and breathe it in through the body, you'll be activating more light codes within your own self.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your contribution. So much appreciated and credit to all of you. Laurie, you spoke about, all of you actually, but you spoke about something about service during the night of the soul. I did have the same intuition, and I would like to, if you can, elaborate a little bit more on that. Everyone.
The dark night of the soul? Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if you...
About the service.
The service.
Service.
The service?
Yeah, okay. You mentioned that during the night of the soul...
Okay, yes, I've got you. Thank you. So the service, what's happening is that humanity is shifting from service to self. Really, we really already have, essentially, although not the collective, from service to self, like it's all about me, I, me, mine, what I want, who cares about you, and like that's so prevalent in big pharma right now, right? Service to self paradigm at the expense and harm and detriment of the many. That paradigm is what's collapsing. And we're shifting to service to the greater good of all, including the self, never to the harm of the self. So the dark night of the soul is simply something that a soul, usually prior to incarnation, signs up for a brief, accelerated, intensified period of time where they decide to do as much service as they can, to clear out as much dark crap as they possibly can handle in a very intensified window, knowing that on the other side they're going to come out as some kind of being who can share and be of service in a better way to humanity. And that is the goal and trajectory ultimately. If you really, we haven't even mentioned that here, but it's so significant. I feel like people in this room get that. That if you're planning on really shifting to 5D, to a 5D-based reality, your core reason for existence must be coming from a place of service. Whether it's how may I help the planet, or, just what is God's will that wills through me? How may I serve? And I think that's pretty basic for a group like this. But that's what that is about. Does that help?
Yeah, I perceive it differently. I was wondering if that was my understanding at some point, if some soul will stay a little more in the dark night of the soul because it can be used by...
Yes, you can get hijacked.
No, that's what I'm saying. That can be used by other people to go themselves to the night of the soul and be of service by staying in that realm for a little while.
Yeah, to help dark beings. You want to talk about that? For sure.
There's a wonderful story in Margaret Starbird's book, Goddess of the Gospels. And she talks about how she woke up to the idea that her dark night of the soul, as she described it, was not about what she thought it was about. I think that's the first discovery that people get, that this is not what I thought it was about, okay? And then the second thing is there's two kinds of service, servitude or service. And so she understood that when she was a nun scrubbing floors and letting people have power over her, which I think is what you're describing, that was servitude. And service is a conscious choice to be able to help others, not because they demanded it or held it over you, but because they needed it and you were capable of giving. So that's the difference. Now, there are many traditions that refer to something like the dark night of the soul. And I believe that there's more than one, that you could have multiple versions of this. essentially, my experience is that the pain you experience is the pain of discovering that you're much bigger than you thought you were. And that pain means that you were wrong because you believe what you were told. And that pain, that disconnect, causes you to want to reevaluate yourself. Because if I'm not who you say I am or you say I am, who am I? So I have to self-identify. And that's the dark night of the soul, to rediscover who you really are and accept it, and as Lori would have you, love it and be it.
Beautiful. Really eloquent. I think we can do, we're going till the top of the hour. Question, Dad?
Yeah, my question. I've noticed at times I've used a map of sometimes California, sometimes the whole world, and sometimes the United States. And in the field of manifestation, I've noticed that I ask, how can I be of service in this moment? What can I do to assist the grief, the sorrow, some of the difficult situations people are going through on all of Earth, including Mother Earth? And I use different stones sometimes, like rose quartz in the form of a heart, for instance, and other different, like crystal, and I'll put them on a place like a certain city. And ask the healing be done. That I don't have to know all the details about what's going on there, but I am aware if there's grief, I'll put it on that place of grief and let the stones and the greater good take care of it. So even with the fires that go on in California, I know there came a moment when we were in Mount Shasta, we were concerned here, living here, about the fires coming on this north side. And so we did a lot of prayer, and it came to me to talk to the fire and ask, what's going on here, and what is it I need to hear from you, fire, that maybe I need to hold that feeling of what's going on. And from the fire, I got quite a bit of information, but it definitely was, as somebody has said, anger. It was stirring up the feelings of anger in distress and dysfunction in our whole state of California and the whole coast, and going up to Oregon and Washington. And it was dissolving it. But the fire said, we're so glad somebody is listening to fire, so that we can begin to dissolve our energy, and it can change and it can shift the whole situation. So I'm wondering if any of you have worked with the maps and putting on certain stones of, we might say, relief or insight or God sight into areas of the world where there is great disharmony.
Well, I'd like to jump in on this one. Great question. Thank you. As a world traveler, I've now been to all 7 continents, and I can tell you they're all in stress. Even Antarctica is melting rapidly in some regions, growing in size in others. It's just paradoxical that the sea levels aren't rising. Perhaps Gaia, Mother Earth, is this living conscious entity, and when you have things like these fires that now have crossed the Sierras for the very first time in history, well, what aren't we being told? And I think the chemtrail agenda is part of that. If I were to put it down to what is affecting these trees, what's stressing them out, look at the elevation from 3,000 to 7,000 when you guys drive out. You'll see that almost all of conifer trees have yellow branches and pine needles. They are stressed, and when they're stressed, the pine needles get in, and then the fires burn. But it's always blamed on something else, right? Global warming. Let's get Greta up here to tell us about that, who never talks about the geoengineering agenda. And this goes multidimensionality. I do think that this dark agenda has been in this fourth dimensional realm, has used cutouts, as I call them, the humans to do the dirty deeds. for a matter of control. This has been going on and on and on this planet. That is going away. And what is coming is this fifth dimensional world. And is coming is the ability to all of us to then learn these incredible human abilities which are in all of us innately. We decalcified our pineal gland. Wait till what happens when we all start seeing with our third eye, which is wired just like our other eyes. So the old saying of the Buddhists is, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. Because life goes on. And when you do start to come into these fifth dimensional awareness, all you can be is the best person you can possibly be. Day in, day out, hour by hour. And stay in that high emotional, love vibrational realm. And that's your protection bubble too. Then the fourth dimensional, these lower archon entities, got nothing on you. It is your shield and protection. So being in service to others is what defines good ETs and bad ETs. I don't care what their eye slits look like or how many scales they got, how tall or how weird they look. If you're in service to others, you're doing the better good. If you're in service to self, then you have an agenda and you're exploiting and you're treating things as they don't exist, or as livestock or chattel, as humans are called. And they're going away. So then it is up to us to be the change we want to see in the world. It really is. And it's an individual quest, right? Thank you. In service to all. And that's the only way to go.
We're still trying to comprehend this from a 3D perspective, aren't we?
Yep.
Even descriptions of what we think it's going to be like in the fourth dimension are still from this construct from where we are. But if we understand what the universal laws are, and we know that the law of one is in the fourth dimension, we've already realized we're already connected. We know that when we get there. And the foundation of everything we do is from a place of love. Where in the world is there room for dark matter and dark entities to get there? Personally, once we get to that state of consciousness, we recognize duality, absolutely, but we have the ability to rise above it now. We still have lessons to learn by observing these 3D things, and that was the whole idea behind this Earth experiment in the first place. Humanity has never been to 5D, have they? Correct?
That is correct.
Here's where we go, and we're just about there, but be mindful. It's the first time we've ever been there. You guys, as the first ones that are going to experience it, take pride in your role as co-creators for whatever new Earth is going to be next, because it isn't going to be this.
We're all becoming the Ascended Master Human, and as Lauren said, it's never been done before. I want to speak to her story about working on the map with crystals. If you've never tried this, it's an amazing experience. My way is to always ask. And when I was first being taught how to work with the weather elementals and given very specific directions on what to do and how to do it, I said, who am I to be altering the weather? What right do I have? And this goes back 30 years. And my guide said, you go on the internet and look up weather manipulation in China. And I was blown away because it was all kinds of information. And then they laughed at me and said, you think you're doing your stuff? You're doing our agenda. So I like to tell people, ask. Whenever you decide you want to change the weather, whenever you decide you want to do something with the elemental kingdom, no matter what, check in. Is it in the highest and best good of all involved? And I was so impressed with the way you described how you did the work. Thank you.
actually add more, but I could add more, but I could also, okay.
I'm going to go because we got to get on the other
I told them I'll be a few minutes late. All right, well, I'll just add a little. First of all, I think you've discovered your purpose. Like, that is you're obviously really amazingly talented and skilled at that, and I would say that bravo for that, and, to your service and contribution in that way. The other thing I would say is I play with the weather a lot, and I would use the word manipulating the weather from a consciousness point of view. The day that the monsoons came in Sedona, after 2 years, I went into a deep meditation and started working with the laws of the universe. And I knew the sub-collective in Sedona was looking for the rain, so I was aligned for the highest, most benevolent best. But really, all of us can not only work with the weather, but all of the external reality. See, here's the other part of the shift from 3D to 5D that's so significant. In 3D, the external world has power over us. Anyone have allergies? Yeah, allergies. All right, you have a belief system that the external world has power over you, and that's why you have the allergies. Because allergies literally are, by definition, something in the external world has power over me. When you start to clear that from your unconscious, and clear it if it's in the DNA, it might be coded in there, the allergies will begin to go away. We also have to go back to that point in time and space where you developed the allergies because it was a way the unconscious chose to gain control over the external reality. That's why allergies exist. Just one example. My point is, in the fifth dimensional reality, as we shift by working with the non-physical, including our concepts, our beliefs, our belief systems, our points of view, all of that, our judgments, our opinions, we shift to realizing that the power is within us. And we stop believing, and this is a long process of personal evolution, we start realizing the external world does not have power over us at all. It is a reflection of who we are internally. And this is one of the greatest and most empowering things, because if you can understand that not only can you manipulate and when I use the word manipulate, positively change the weather and other things in the reality, when you also start working with the universal laws by commanding, not commanding from egoic arrogance or personality structure, but rather from your God-sovereign being as a participant in this reality, with all the power of the divine source working on behalf of the collective, I command that there is rain in ways that are good, right, and divinely aligned. Just one example. I command this field of pure potential to respond to me, and always ensuring that what you are commanding is for the most benevolent best of all. This is where we can all make great change, because the external reality is responding to us. It is not an effect, it is an effect. It is not the cause. So in 3D, we think we're at the cause, we're at the effect, and it's the cause. Oh, COVID is the effect. COVID is the cause, and I'm the effect in 3D, right? I'm at the effect of it in 3D. In 5D, I activate my codes of immunity and perviousness. I understand the whole thing is a big game. I start reconnecting with the higher realms. I start channeling light through me. I start commanding through the field. I start recognizing my purpose on this earth is so magnificent and so important. It would not serve humanity for me to get sick. I'm just using one example. So you start owning that within yourself, that you have the pure potentiality within you as you align with the most benevolent best for all, including yourself, harm to none, and the field will be responding to you like that.
I just got a text. They're waiting for you on the other panel from Laura. Thank you, ladies, so much. That was incredible. We got 10 more minutes, so it feels something. Are these two amazing? We're going 5D for 10 more minutes here, folks. This ain't ended just yet. Thank you, ladies, so much. That was awesome. And let's go back to another question. So the battle of conflict of the mind between self-doubt and, yeah. Well, we're going to talk about this together. You guys have heard the concept of the monkey mind? So the Buddhists talk about this a lot when the young monks joined the monastery. And I was very privileged and honored to have spent many months, even years, in Asia. Very, very fascinating part of the world. And my favorite people, bar none, are Buddhists. They are so chill and at peace. And when I toured this far-out location in Laos called Luang Prabang, it's still a medieval city, fully intact. And every morning the monks would come out. Young men who were there in service to all. They would pray and meditate for world peace every day. And they would come out really early in the morning at about 5:30, and people would take it upon themselves to come out that early with food offering. And along would walk 24 young men in their saffron red robes with their heads down, just walking with their bowl. And whatever was put in their bowl, that was all they were going to eat for the day. And you could tell how grateful and thankful they were without ever making a sound, without ever looking up or even acknowledging you. And this is part of the training that they go through in conjunction with taming the monkey mind. And so the analogy is, we've got this little monkey that's always hindering us with these ideas. Hey, do that. Hey, ego, look at that. Hey, be a big guy over here. Do this, do that. Oh, screw with that person, this or that. How do you tame that monkey mind? How do you find that quiet and peace and that serenity, which, as we've spoken on the panel today through meditation, is really the path up to enlightenment. And really, this is the end goal of every single one of us. And maybe this is why we're in Earth School, to learn this, to ascend to this point where we feel, and it's a very interpersonal journey, we have conquered the monkey mind. We have conquered ourselves. And we have become this state of enlightenment that is so prevalent in not just Buddhism, but other religions in Asia. They had a different take on things entirely than we did. You see, at its core, Buddhism is a philosophy. It's a way of life. And the Buddha himself always said, do not idolize me. Don't make me the God. I'm just one who can give you the teachings, the Dharma. And that's what he did so wonderfully and so beautifully. One of my most prized books, and I've got quite a good collection, is called The Buddha and Jesus, The Parallel Teachings. And it's about 225 pages, and every single spread is what Buddha said and what Jesus said. I will tell you, when there is an ascended master who comes here to earth and speaks truth, it's the truth that lasts throughout the ages. Because think of truth as kind of like a pillar. You can dress it up in all these different ways and make it look this way. It's an illusion. All of that always falls away, and what still remains and stands tall is the truth. And when you speak it and you hear it, you know it, and it becomes part of your essence. And that's what I do believe is the path to enlightenment. And that is also in being service to others every day of your life. And once you start to realize that we are these spirits in the human body, and I love that bumper sticker, we're not humans having a spiritual experience, we're spirits having the human experience. And since so many of us have had so many multiple lifetimes, and I do believe when you start to tap into these multi-dimensions, these memories start coming back. And I'll tell you, just on my travels, it started in my early 20s. The first time I went to Pompeii, Italy, the place felt so familiar, and I knew I'd been there before. And this is what gives me goosebumps when I talk about this. And you know it's true to your cause when you feel that. That is who you are. Your soul is speaking back to you and saying, oh yeah, you've been here before. I know that the Colosseum's that way. I've never been there before. I knew the Forum was that way. First time there. And so travel for me has really opened these doors, and that was just the first of many. Boy, wait till you get to Egypt. We've all been there. If you've been on this earth incarnating, you have been there. And boy, was that a high civilization. And before that was the Atlanteans. And before that was the Lemurians. And the original high civilization on this planet were the Hyperboreans. And we are talking about hundreds of thousands and even a million years ago. there have been high-tech civilizations on this planet. They were few in numbers. It was still a very wild and woolly planet. And it could very well be that there are some remnant dinosaurs that still pop up in the ocean and possibly come through Hollow Earth and so forth. So we are living really on a multi-dimensional planet. And I'm glad we're here alone for one time, Lowell, because one question I have about interdimensionality with the Telosians, who were the Lemurians, how have they been able to keep that multi-dimensionality while still taking a physical form in 3D?
Physical forms are still through the dimensions. It's not until you hit sixth dimension where you no longer require a physical body. But then your being is more, you act as a collective. And the thinking between you and others at that stage where it's not just law of one, it's law of love and unconditional wisdom, unconditional love. There's your platform for how you move forward. I wanted to reflect back. I don't know how to answer the question that you've got about how do you lock yourself in, because all the time that I was spending on just trying to deep dive, I had to do that in quiet spaces. So I don't know how anyone with family, job, hobbies, and all the rest of the things that keep us occupied and busy, how do you find space to find that quiet place? That's why I wander off in the woods and Shasta to find it. I've stumbled across other things along the way. I wish I could tell you how to get there, because it was a journey for me to quiet. I wish everybody could find it. I hope you all do. It's waiting for you, but I'm going to wait to get the last question in here while we still have time.
Yeah. Last question. Here we have.
Well, it's not a question, but I've been sitting there and it kept telling me I must come up and speak this truth that I was given that may assist others in some modality to assist the fifth dimension. So what's happened with me is that I was working on my family bloodlines, and I was shown different times, whether it was the paternal or the maternal, and individuality working with a lifetime that I might have seen murder, let's say with fire, like being one of the on the maternal side, the women that were burned at the stake for being so-called witches. And what I was shown was that the fire element, when we worked with that and cleared that and transmuted it and put it in a transfiguration, that what happened is that the elementals now were in a higher vibrational assistance to assist Mother Earth into her higher dimension. And that no matter if it was paternal, even matter if it was maternal, it would be water, it would be the same as people were drowned by murder. You transmute that space, that water in that place, and transmute your family line with that. Then that water now is purified into the next level of helping Mother Earth with that elemental and going and so forth, so forth. It was such a profound thing for me to experience, and I'm happy to share with anyone that this is then what I was shown, that the family lines were like a ribbon of multicolors that were joining. So my family line joined with everybody else's family line, and that went down to each and every one's bloodline, because we're all one.
Yeah.
All our bloodlines.
Beautiful.
I won.
Yeah.
So I have the courage to thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And if we can, let's address the elementals.
We have a minute to do so.
We have 1 minute to do so. Okay, well, since we're talking about dimensionality, let's go down a level. As I understand it, 2D, the second dimension, is the realm of the mineral world. And there is a form of consciousness there.
We all came through it. We evolved. You came from 1 to 2, and the 8 octaves in between. Yes.
De-evolution. And we are all on the trajectory to continue higher. And here we are, ready to graduate Earth School and do that jump right up to 5D. right? This is the test of the human race right now. I would say every single one of us is incarnated here to be here right now in an adult body, really in the prime of our lives. So we are the action team. We're the ground crew, you guys. Yeah, let's activate. And as Alex and many have said, the benevolent ETs are waiting to see what the humans are going to do. Because for the very first time in the history of humanity, those controlling fourth dimensional, lower, dense entities, the Archonic network, has had an iron grip control on the human consciousness on Earth. And that is now breaking down. And now it's up to us, every single one of us. We have a role to play in this, I guarantee you. So if you know anybody who's slipping into the depths of depression or even contemplating suicide, just let them know they have an important role to play, and absolutely that is the worst decision. And once again, inquire within. Because when you go within, and here are the two parallel teachings once again, and I'll end on this. In the East, it is inquire within. In the West, it is know thyself. Once again, it's the same thing. And it's telling you to be the master inside. And when you control yourself and your emotional state, then you can be in perfect service to others. And that is your fifth dimensional state. And you will find the rewards of that coming back to you in spades, higher and better than you can ever imagine. So thank you guys so very much. It's been really wonderful.
I don't know if you had a question, but if you do, we'll stay after and answer for you, okay? Okay.
We do have another group coming in, so thank you guys so very much. It's been wonderful spending this time with you.